Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warjack if you want to call me by my in-game name, and this is going to be a really fun, interesting video that is a little bit off from what we normally post on here, right? We're going to be going over Hearthstone's top 10 kind of slang words, but you can apply these towards really any trading card game. I don't want to say trading card game because you can't trade in Hearthstone, but any card game that's out there. So whether you're brand new to the scene, never played the game in your life, or just starting, I think these words and these phrases, being able to understand them and know what either when I'm playing, are talking about, or whether you're watching another streamer or watching a tournament of Hearthstone, and all the casters are throwing out all these terminologies and vernacular that you're just like, what the hell are they talking about? I have no idea. I'm just trying to start this game, and they're talking a different language. So I kind of targeted the top 10 in my opinion, that a beginner player coming into the scene should definitely keep an eye out for, understand these words, and from here, I'm going to go into each individual kind of word. I'm going to give an example, and I'm going to show an example on the screen, and we're going to talk about it together and kind of go over why that matches the word itself. So without further ado, let's get into number one, and I believe it's top decking. So the definitions to all the words that we're going to talk about are going to be on the top right here. And the first one, like we said, was top deck, a card that has just been drawn from the top of the deck from either player that greatly helps that player in the particular situation that they're in. So in my situation that we're staring down here, I was at 14 life. My opponent played at Hellscream. It has 10 attack, which means if it makes contact with my hero power directly, we're going down to 4 HP, and you better believe we're probably going to lose at that point. So there's only one card currently in my hand that can damage Hellscream, but only for 4, which means when we play the Auctioneer and we use coin, we need to draw into first a damaging spell and or a preparation, which will allow us to cast a damaging spell. But the cards that we have to draw are very, very specific to the situation, and they have to happen basically in the first kind of 2 to 3 cards that Auctioneer draws, which is quite unlikely. But in this situation, I was definitely able to come out on top because we were able to draw into the Fan of Knives. From there, we were able to get the preparation, and then from there, we were able to eviscerate, and then Fan of Knives the Hellscream down, allowing us to forego taking the 10 damage we would have taken the following turn, which would then, the preparation and Fan of Knives would be considered top decks, as they were kind of exactly what we needed in that exact situation, and without them, bad things would have happened to me. So the next word we're going to move to is lethal. This is definitely a very, very popular word among streamers and casters, or just myself when we're playing. We're always looking for lethal, and the definition to this is the sufficient damage to be able to defeat the enemy hero and win the game. So basically taking them from 30 to 0, whether it's in one turn over the course of the game. Having lethal means you've basically put them in checkmate. In this particular example, we've had double fireballs in our hand. Our opponent has taken us down to 1 HP, which was really, really crazy, but we were basically able to double fireball and ping them in the face for exact lethal. So we had the exact amount of damage to be able to win the game with the cards in hand. So the next word we're going to talk about is RNG. Again, a very, very popular sort of term in Hearthstone. You're going to hear a lot of, again, streamers and casters talk about it. But the definition of it, first of all, RNG stands for random number generator. And that means the process at which the computer, which is basically Hearthstone, generates the equivalent of chance. And what that means in this particular situation is we have a card called Resurrect in our hand. For 2 mana, it says randomly summon, or let's say bring back a creature that has died on your side of the field this game. In this particular situation, we were hoping it would bring back a bog creeper or some giant creature with taunt to protect us. But unfortunately for me, there was a lot of different creatures that had died this game, and the chances of it pulling bog creeper were very, very low. But we were happening, the RNG, or the chance of it happening, just so happened to roll on bringing back that specific card we were looking for. So in this situation, we could say our RNG was high, or we rolled high, because the game just so happened to randomly select the one card we were looking for in this exact situation. There's tons of different examples of this throughout Hearthstone, as it is a trading card game, and RNG, or the random factor, goes basically in any trading card game, right? Whether you're drawing cards, playing cards, or generating random cards, there's definitely a sort of random factor, and that randomness is generated by the computer, which would be the equivalent again of chance. So our next term is going to be meta, and this is defined as which decks are the most popular or strongest currently in Hearthstone. So we can understand that this is going to kind of change over time, right? What was really popular and powerful maybe a year ago is maybe no longer seen, has changed, or a new deck has arisen and has countered that particular deck, and the meta has shifted accordingly. So when people say the meta shifts, that means new decks are being introduced, taken away, counters are being thrown in there, and this is all kind of making the game fluctuate in a sense, right? So you go into play the game one day and you could meet all shamans or all warriors, and then the next day all of a sudden you see warlock and hunter because someone had found a way to be able to counter the shamans and warriors or whatever the previous week. Sometimes the meta will shift all the time, daily, sometimes it'll shift weekly, and then right now it's basically been the same meta for, I would want to say, a month or two, where mid-range shaman is the most popular and the best deck currently on ladder. It was basically every single player that went to the World Championship brought one single deck, or not one single deck, but the same deck, and that's mid-range shaman in their lineup, which was just crazy, right? It's to see the same deck being brought by every player out of the 5 decks they can bring kind of shows you, you know, maybe this deck could be a bit too powerful. But that's besides the point. So basically meta, what's in, what's not in. The next term we're going to talk about is mid-range, and this is kind of goes along with what we were talking about with the meta, and I'll kind of explain that as soon as we get through the definition, and that is a deck type that is balanced between aggro and control. So what that means is a mid-range deck has both qualities of an aggressive deck, and it has the qualities of a very control-based deck, right? So we have the ability to, at the beginning of the game, be very powerful, have an explosive start, and be able to kind of wrap up the game quickly if your opponent isn't dealing with what you're putting out. And control, what that basically means is you have cards in the deck that allow you to kind of navigate the game in a way that makes you the dictator of what's going on. So we have cards like, for example, Hex, that allows you to basically get rid of whatever minion you'd like for the cheap price of 3 mana. So this is a very controlling card, very card that kind of makes your opponent have to play around it. Let's say they have something huge in their hand. They may not want to play that immediately because they know you have a card that's going to be able to counter it very efficiently, making it so your opponent's then going to gain a greater advantage over what you've got going on. And that kind of ties into our meta picture that we had before and what was going on with that. Because as we could see, Shaman was dominating the meta, being, you know, very popular, very powerful class. And the reason being is it's called mid-range Shaman, and that is because it has kind of the ability to be everything, right? You've got cards that are very controlling in the deck, you have cards that are very aggressive in the deck, and you don't have to pay a whole lot for either one. It's not like you give up a whole bunch of over here and you sacrifice over there. It has the qualities of both of those, and it does it very well in both, which makes it powerful because you're not really missing out on anything, you know? When you play an aggressive deck, you're missing out on control. When you play control, you're missing out on the aggressive portion. But with a mid-range deck, you kind of take, like I said, a little bit from each, but Shaman does it so very well, and that's what makes that particular deck so powerful, and it's what makes mid-range deck, in particular that specific class, so powerful right now. So that's why I figured those kind of two definitions tied together, and I'd figure I'd show the same screen for that. So our next term is going to be aggro or face, and this is kind of a label put on decks, so you can say like an aggro deck or a face deck, and basically the definition is a deck type that builds towards creatures and direct damage spells, which allow you to win the game as soon as possible. So kind of decks that revolve around this are face hunter, or they aggro hunter, or face warrior, pirate warrior, aggro shaman, face shaman. So all of these decks kind of revolve around, again, having very direct damage spells, or minions that are able to deal direct damage to your opponent as well, through either buffing cards or having the abilities such as charge, so it can attack right away. And these decks normally are able to finish the game before turn 6, and if they don't, like I said, they're very aggressive, which means they fizzle out. And that's kind of the con of playing a very aggressive deck, is you're giving up on your control variant, which is what we had talked about in our previous terminology with mid-range, control, and aggressive. But strictly aggressive decks, explosive start, whole deck's built around dealing damage built around dealing damage as fast as possible, and then it kind of runs out of steam. So our 7th key term, almost to 10, guys, is tempo, and this is basically the player with the momentum of the game behind them. They're the one driving the match and really the ones making the plays and having your opponent react back to them. So in this particular example that I'm showing you guys here, I'm playing Rogue, and I'm able to coin out on turn 5, which gives us 6 mana, and I'm able to play 2 SI7 agents, which cost 3 mana each, dealing 2 damage to basically whatever I want, whether it's my opponent's minion or their face directly, because they have 2 minions out that have 2 HP. It works out perfect, right? So basically I'm spending 5 mana, or 3 cards, because I was able to generate 1 with the coin. I'm able to deal 4 damage and basically summon a 6/6 while killing 2 of my opponent's minions. So I've basically removed everything they have, all of their threats, played a 6/6 in stats on my side, 2 3/3s, and I'm dictating the turn thereafter, because whatever my opponent plays, I'm going to have a turn there to react back to what they played, instead of the situation I was in before this turn started where I had to react to what my opponent played. So it puts kind of me in the momentum seat. I'm the driver, and from there, you'll be able to make the plays, and this is why tempo is so important, and it is used a lot in the terminology of Hearthstone and kind of who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's driving the match, who's the one in the back seat. Number 8, this would be the nerf / buff, because both of these kind of go hand in hand, and the definition of both of these is basically changing a card to make it more or less effective or desirable. So a few examples of kind of nerfs that they've done in the past is Abusive Sergeant, right? So they've taken this card from a 1 mana 2/1 to a 1 mana 1/1. They kept the ability to the same. So what they basically did was reduce its attack down to 1, making this this would be called a nerf, and they would be making it maybe less desirable or effective for those players who are playing decks that this card is very, very strong in, making them less strong and maybe more balanced. Another example would be the Rockbiter weapon, which would be increasing the mana. So the last card we talked about, Abusive, they lowered the attack. For example, like this of the nerf, they actually increased the mana by 1, but kept the ability the same. And another quick example would be Tuskar Totemic, where they kept the mana cost the same, they kept the attack the same, the HP is the same, but they actually changed its ability from being able to summon any totem, like Totem Golem, Mana Tide, and Flame Tongue Totem, to just a basic totem, which is the Searing Totem, the Healing Totem, the Spell Power Totem, and the Stoneclaw Totem. So there's a lot of different ways they can nerf things. Currently, I don't think they've buffed anything recently, so that's why I didn't include that, but a buff would basically make a card more effective or more desirable to play, whether it's increasing the attack instead of decreasing, or making the ability maybe a little bit stronger, or increasing its HP, of something of that nature. So this is definitely something to keep in mind, because every once in a while, about every 6 months, Blizzard decides they're going to nerf whatever cards are very problematic at that particular time. So it's good that players know, what does nerf mean, what does a buff mean, and how is that going to affect my collection. So our 9th and second to last term is going to be value, and the definition of this is describes the efficiency of a certain play you or your opponent makes. So in this situation, I'm playing our Super Secret Mage, which is a super fun deck to play, but that's not what this is about. We use Kabbalist Tome, which says randomly generate 3 mage spells. It doesn't, whatever spells they are. So this would be like the random or the RNG factor we've talked about before, right? They're just random, gives us 3 random mage spells. But this is very value oriented, right? We're taking our 1 tome and we're basically splitting it up into 3 spells. And those spells happen to give us another tome, which would give us then 3 more spells. But the crazy part about this is that tome that the tome gave us another tome, which means from 1 single tome that we played for 5 mana, it generated 9 cards out of it. Which is absolutely insane. It's a 1-for-9 value ratio, and that's just absurd. And the funny part is we were actually playing against a warrior in this particular matchup, and warriors or I should say control warriors or Cthulhu warriors are very much known for being able to outvalue your opponent with being able to make 2-for-1 card trades, such as cards like Brawl. But in this situation, because we got lucky with our RNG, Tome continuously gave us Tome, which allowed us to continuously play cards and get more and more value from just 1 single card being played, eventually leading us into a win in this particular game, because we just kept generating cards and the opposing player could not keep up with that sort of value. The last term we're going to talk about, number 10, and this is going to be OTK, or people call it the 1-turn kill. This would be a combination of cards that lead equates to killing the opponent in 1 turn. So a really cool example of this, there's 2 decks that of course come to mind when I did it that we're going to show examples of. In this particular one, we're playing Rogue, we play Malagos, we combo Malagos with our Sinister Strikes and Evises, and we deal well over 27 damage to our opponent in just 1 turn. This would be the OTK, or 1 turn kill. There's no reaction to your opponent. You play cards and you defeat them all in that 1 turn. Very combo based deck. You have to line things up appropriately. You can't just play whatever you want all the time. There's, particular things and very specific cards that need to be played at specific times based on what you have in your hand. Another example of this would be in Freeze Mage. Freeze Mage is known for being able to kill your opponent in 1 turn. In this particular example, again, the opponent is well over 20 HP, and then from there, we're able to take them down from above 20 to 0 in 1 turn. There's no room for your opponent to react to this. It is a 1 turn kill, and a lot of people find that these decks are very annoying to go against because you don't really get any interactiveness with it. There's no, you've done a whole bunch of damage. Let me heal back up because I put healing in my deck. So when I'm low, I can heal. It's basically you're at 30 or close to 30 and you die. And there's decks that again revolve around that 1 turn kill, such as the Malagos Rogue and the Freeze Mage decks. So with that basically wraps up our top 10 kind of terminology. When entering Hearthstone, you should kind of know or familiarize yourself with. If there's anything I left out, which I'm sure you can leave that in the comment section below, that you thought maybe should have been in this top 10 that I didn't get to, or maybe I didn't include. But if this video does well and you guys have enjoyed it, I'll go ahead and make maybe like another bit to this, like another top 10 part 2, going over everything I might have missed. But I figured this is a really good starting point for new players to kind of understand the terminology, because we don't want to give you a whole bunch of vocab words, right? We don't want to list out 50 words you should know, because that's just overwhelming, and Hearthstone's already overwhelming as is to any new player. So keeping it to kind of the top 10 makes it so it's not so overwhelming, but it's still like, I should probably know these 10 words, and then we'll kind of push on from there and dig a little deeper if I enjoy the game enough and I found this video helpful. So with that, I really hope you've enjoyed and learned something. I'm Warshak, of course, and happy whatever the hell day it is.